design. Dave, I'm gonna pull this out.
Well, hello there. Thanks for joining us. NESN.com's NESN Around, the sports podcast about nothing, everything, and
I like
little
that
things.
intro. More of a lounge vibe to it. Hey, welcome to NESN Around. You know, a little voice going.
I got music playing too. It's,
It's nice, laid back, mellow.
hitting our stride.
Very dreary out while we're recording this.
Yeah,
so.
late in the day. The weather sucks. A little laid back today.
Yeah.
Getting towards
It's
the end of the week. I'm NESN.com's Mike Cole. That's NESN.com's Ricky Doyle. As we mentioned, it's NESN Around. It's a podcast where we kind of just shoot the breeze about the week in sports. A little bit of offbeat, evergreen.
Yeah, some more buzzwords.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. We're gonna get into the week that was in sports. Look ahead to next week. As part of looking back, we'll revisit our weekly predictions. We'll start there. Ricky, last week you said your prediction was that Colin Kaepernick would sign with a football team.
And a team more specifically other than the Seattle Seahawks.
That doesn't look good.
That doesn't look good. He still hasn't signed with anybody as of right now. But all indications seem to be trending towards him potentially joining the Seahawks.
I think
that's really seemingly the only team that's been linked to him.
Yep.
Which is why I kind of made that the bold prediction of the week. I thought maybe somebody would come out of nowhere, recognize. I thought maybe a quarterback needy team would recognize the interest there and say maybe we should snatch this guy up. Hasn't been the case.
No.
So this saga continues as to where exactly Colin Kaepernick is going to find work for the 2017 NFL season. But as of right now, Seattle still looks like the favorite. So I was wrong. Long story short, I was wrong.
Right.
But I don't know. I still think there could be a mystery team out there somewhere that jumps into this thing.
Yeah, maybe. It's we can get into this a little bit more because it kind of works into our first topic that we'll get to. But a little bit of friction in Seattle right now, more so than usual.
My thing is, now that he worked out for him, why haven't they signed him yet?
Yeah,
what's the holdup?
I don't know.
That leads me to believe that maybe the interest isn't as high as we're led to believe. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe there's some sort of tug of war within the organization.
Could be, and I think you might be onto something there within that. I think there's something going on in that organization.
Which is why that was going to be my prediction this week, and then I realized that you did it last week, that he was going to sign with Seattle, and it would be just the latest in the domino of crap that is going on there. Not good.
Yeah,
we'll get to that a little bit more.
Yeah,
later.
we'll get into I'm sure you're alluding to the Richard Sherman stuff,
Yes.
and we'll get into that. And I kind of made mention of it a few weeks ago that with those trade talks, there was something weird going on. So as you mentioned, we'll get into that.
My prediction last week was the Tom Brady concussion story will go away. I think I'm giving myself full marks for that one.
Yeah, it has. I mean,
it has disappeared. It was
every now and then you see one little headline that's like, well, it's
Right.
kind of like somebody trying to prolong the story, I guess. But today it was the Belichick not being asked about it. And,
talked about lacrosse, but he didn't talk about Brady's
and
concussion.
there was something on Deadspin about the reporters not asking about it, and I think reporters have responded and explained why that's been the case. So it's still somewhat of a storyline, but
the league pretty much swept it under the rug as quickly as it could, which is somewhat hypocritical on their part for various reasons we can get into maybe a little bit later. It's not a big deal. I don't think it's just in hindsight maybe we should have seen that coming because there weren't a whole lot of details, not a lot of specifics. It wasn't like this was ever documented or anything like that. Brady doesn't tell anybody it's not going to be a thing. So.
No, and also just that interview in general that it stemmed from, the whole Giselle interview. If you watch that, her tone when she says it was just kind of like just
it is what it's
just kind of throwing it out there like it was no big deal, and I don't know, people say weird things when the camera's on. I mean, granted, she's in front of the camera a lot more than we are, but it's like, I don't know. It didn't strike me as a big deal, and it's one of those things where it reads a lot differently when you see it in writing as opposed to actually listening to her say it.
Yeah, context is important. So, but like I said, it's a win for me. So that's all I really care about. Let's get to our first topic, segment, whatever you want to call. Actually, we're getting. I think this week more so than the past few weeks. We're just gonna shoot the breeze about some things. And
we got one thing I noticed though that we're gonna get into is kind of a theme here.
Yeah,
somewhat of a theme. We talked about this the other day, and just kind of riffs in the workplace, I guess is a good way to put it. You already mentioned the Sherman thing that we'll get into, and this first topic obviously is the whole sentence,
yeah,
whole basis of it.
A lot of this show's going to sit around working with somebody you hate and working with people you hate, which you and I, as two very bitter, generally unhappy people, is something that we can relate to.
Yeah,
not going to
we get along
names,
with
obviously.
Yeah, we get along with most people, but it's.
Right.
I can certainly relate to it as a pessimist at times.
It really stems from, I thought this was a fascinating story. ESPN is ditching Mike and Mike, basically. Mike Greenberg's going to start his own SportsCenter daily show, which is going to do whatever. It's a morning show. Mike Golick will stay with ESPN2 for a little bit. They'll switch over to ESPNU. It'll still be simulcast on the radio. He's doing a Trey Wingo, so it'll be Mike and Trey, I guess. I don't know how they're going to call it. But Sports Illustrated dropped this really interesting report earlier in the week, says, just quoting some ESPN staffers, people behind the scenes at ESPN, people who've worked with these two. One of them said, it's a really poisonous atmosphere right now. Most of us don't see the show lasting through its contractual end. Side note, it's supposed to end in December. Might not get that far. Quote, but I give these guys both immense credit when the light goes on. You would not know what's going on. They're pros on the air. Another person said they are marvelous actors on set, but they barely make eye contact with each other these days. And then another one said they virtually ignore each other off air. So basically, Mike and Mike hate each other is what we're getting to.
Yeah.
Just a really weird dynamic. You and I kind of talked about this earlier in the week, kind of going over our show notes. Like, it's just the weird irony, the fact that you hate somebody so much that you work with and your job is to carry on a conversation for 4 hours.
Yeah.
It is right. Good for these guys for being good actors, because I don't know, like if I hated you, I would be ready to get this show done with as soon as possible.
Well, it's weird as like somebody, as the viewer, knowing this now, having this information at your disposal, because it almost makes it, you almost get the feeling now it's like, well, I'm led to believe that these guys actually like each other, and they're obviously, they're pulling the wool over my eyes. What else are they pulling the wool over my eyes?
And I think
how genuine are they about the crap that they're spewing?
I bet you, nobody's genuine in this day and age when it comes to sports media. Like, everything's manufactured.
But it just feels a lot more like having that information. Right. Then you can, catch on the little subtle digs maybe, or it just makes everything feel a little disingenuous, I guess.
Yeah, and we took the important stuff out of the article, like the juiciest stuff. Like, there was more there where it's like, this wasn't necessarily overnight, but it also wasn't like, I don't think these guys have hated each other for 20 years. I think this is somewhat developed over the years. That's what happens. You spend 20 years together. I mean, Jesus, how many marriages last as long as these two guys have lasted now? So it's not necessarily surprising. It's just, it is awkward. Now when you watch it, like, Thursday morning, Greeny was twerking on air. Like, it just feels kind of weird to be like, it's like if you...
they're goofing around, but secretly they want to beat the ever-living piss out of each other.
It's like if you,
if it's that
it's like if you're like 12 years old and you're in bed and you heard your parents just screaming at each other every night, and then you wake up in the morning and they're like making each other breakfast or something.
Smiling at each other as they're pouring milk.
Just weird. So... But it made us think, like, it's, I think sports more so than any other profession, like, maybe that's probably overstating a little bit, but it's a hard profession to be in when you hate the person you're working with, because it's so team-oriented, whether it's on the field or in the broadcast booth, on a network, whether it's in a newsroom.
And I think there's a relatively high chance that you're gonna not like somebody that you work with, especially when you're dealing with the egos of
the money,
whether it's sports media or whether it's sports. I mean, I don't think we got to worry about our egos. I don't think we're making the payday that Mike and Mike are making.
I don't think so.
But like the ego factor when you get to that high level in sports media, or in the the locker room, the clubhouse, things like that. I mean, it's just these guys making hundreds of millions of dollars. Everybody thinks their crap don't stink. There's going to be some butting of heads that you don't necessarily hear about until, like you said, 20 years down the road when somebody all of a sudden writes a report like that.
Yeah, and when there's just so many changes too.
Right.
When that atmosphere, that environment changes, obviously feelings are going to change as well. We were kind of throwing a few out there. We were talking about it earlier. What's the most awkward position in sports to try to do or to be in when you hate the person you're closely working with? We kind of threw out a couple of examples, like if a pitcher hates his catcher. And I don't even know if that nowadays happens. We coddle big league pitchers so much. Like David Ross's career got extended by like 3 seasons because he was John Lester's binky.
Yeah.
And like, not to take anything away from David Ross because he played well, especially late in his career. But like, that would be a weird one. Quarterback, wide receiver, you see that a lot.
And in the same thing with like the pitcher catcher thing, it's always a weird dynamic because there are so many catchers too where English isn't their first language, and you often wonder how they communicate at all, let alone develop some sort of growing hatred for a pitcher. So
well, like for a lot of those
maybe that's
guys,
overvalued. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe there's not a relationship there.
Yeah,
maybe they're not that close. Like, how close can like Kenta Maeda be to like Yasmani Grandal?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, exactly.
They don't even either of them. I mean, I don't know how well they speak English, but like
no,
English is not their first language for either of them.
Yeah,
like,
and you send out somebody who does speak English, now you get three languages going toe to toe with them on. It's like,
so that is I think like quarterback receiver would be a really
quarterback
weird
receiver,
one to and you see that some places a lot.
What about quarterback with anybody? Really seems like it would be pretty difficult. Quarterback and center. That's
quarterback offensive line, where like if the quarterback's just a complete dick to his offensive line, it's so easy. That's not good quarterbacking if you're just going to be a jerk to your offensive line, because they kind of protect you.
I would think the biggest issue for a quarterback would be dealing with like your offensive coordinator or a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like something that could potentially be irreparable. I mean, it just because of how, you're pretty much, you need to be on the same page. And if you're not, then you're going to have some issues offensively. Yeah. So that stands out. Or this is one you threw out there when we were just kind of messing around the other day. It was a golfer and his caddy.
Golfer and his caddy, yeah.
I would think that as a golfer, you would, if you're not going to have a caddy that you despise, but that's a long time to be out there. That's like you're on an island,
and it's
basically.
Very trust-based, too.
Yeah,
like,
so that to me was probably the worst. It's maybe in that same sort of like line of logic. A NASCAR driver is crew chief.
Yep.
I mean, essentially, you're relying on that guy for a lot.
Anything where there's trust involved is always dicey.
Yeah. I don't know if this guy's gonna,
Yeah, I still think it comes back to like the media, though. I think like play-by-play and a color guy, like.
I think it's more difficult for the media.
Part of the business is like pretending and giving off the illusion that you're happy, and like nobody wants to tune into a broadcast where two guys hate each other. So.
Yeah. Well, really, I mean, just the NBA is pretty interesting too because of how star driven that is. Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think of like LeBron James is basically the assumption is that he runs the Cavs.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like. If he was to get into some huge dispute with Ty Lue, like I think we know who's going to win out in that situation. So just there's weird dynamics across the NBA in terms of who has all the power, who holds the cards. So I don't know, that's a weird one.
Yep. A lot of that's based, like you said, in power too. So usually whoever wins those is whoever's got the most at stake.
In general, though, just what people you don't like, just set yourself up for a very miserable atmosphere.
You spend more of your time at work than you do anywhere else, right?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot. I mean, then you're fighting the temptation to like take, like I said, in the case of Mike and Mike, if you wanted to take like a subtle jab or I don't know. It's just
it sucks dealing with people that you don't like at work, especially in.
Fortunately, we get along so
like
great.
This. Yeah.
You and I.
Yeah. Sure. All right, let's talk NFL rule changes. They changed some rules.
God, this show's gonna get over. I'm getting sick of you already.
NFL comes to the rescue, pretends that they're the greatest. That kind of tells you where I'm at. Do a little quick thumbs up, thumbs down.
Sure.
The league announced this week that a few things have been tweaked, nothing really major, but we'll start with.
There's really like what 4 changes?
I got 4 here. We'll do the real basic ones first. NFL approved the roster cutdown days. It's just one day now. It used to be like midway through training or midway through the preseason, you went from 90 to 75,
right?
And then eventually you get down to 53. Now you have the entire preseason. You just have to go from 90 to 53 by the end of the preseason. Yeah. So you would have 90 guys for week 4 of the preseason. Thumbs up or thumbs down?
I'm giving this a thumbs down.
Yeah.
And my thing is like the cut down day, the initial cut down day. Mm-hmm. It always felt very like high schoolish to me. Like your fact that you're like, all right, so you make like I just picture like Bill Belichick like plastering a thing on the wall, like guys slapping it on the wall and saying, all right, guys, like have at it, and then you go up and everybody's looking for their name. And I liked that. Like I like that element to it. I also like the idea that I know going into that 4th preseason. First of all, I mean the preseason. I don't want to waste too much time in the preseason, but going into that fourth week, I like to know that the guys that I'm watching at least have a chance to make the roster. I like identifying certain guys
but the fourth week is a bad example, I think, because
but at least but I mean, at least there are a few guys that are easy to pinpoint. Yeah. Like there's probably 5-6 guys. Like, all right, there's a chance that this guy's playing for his job. Now it's just a huge collection of just garbage.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going thumbs down for this one because I think it's unfair to the players in some instances. Like, I mean, I guess it goes both ways. You get 4 weeks of tape, and so it's out there. Like, teams are going to know if you're worth the crap by the end of 4 weeks if you're playing, and it gives you one extra week to make an impression. But, like, you get cut loose week 2 in the preseason, at least it gives you a chance to catch on somewhere else.
Yeah.
Now it's like, now you could be if you're the 90th guy in the roster and the team doesn't make any cuts through 4 weeks, it's great to be on a roster for an extra 2 weeks, but then if you're the first guy cut, like, what good were you doing the last 2 weeks?
You're right. Yeah, in a lot of instances, it's like if you get cut in the initial cut down, it ends up to be a blessing in disguise. Right. Like you said, to catch on elsewhere.
So I don't like that one. Yeah. Another one.
But either way, I mean, that one doesn't really. Yeah. Whatever.
If I'm not, I don't think I wrote this one down, but the injured reserve change, so you can now bring back 2 players from injured reserve. It's basically injured reserve designated to return. You can only do 1 player. Now you can do 2. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I'll give it a thumbs up. I mean, the whole thing for me is I want to see the best players in the league on the field in the most important games at the end of the season. Yep. And if this helps in that regard, then sure.
Yeah, this is thumbs way up. It just makes way too much sense.
Yeah, I don't see a drawback.
Yeah, you can't do it with everybody. Like, I don't think you can go crazy with this one because teams can get there's some chicanery involved, you can screw around with roster.
But adding one additional spot, I don't think that makes a whole lot of difference.
If it's gonna make the product better when the game means the most, then I'm all for it. So, all right, the important ones, quote unquote important, because nothing's actually important with the NFL. They just make you think it's important, which is one of the greatest scams going in sports. Where do you want to start? You want to start with overtime or celebrations?
Let's go celebrations.
All right, so the NFL has loosened restrictions on celebrations, which is just a weird thing to say. That's again, the brilliance of the NFL is that guys celebrating a jubilant moment is now news. You can now use the football as a prop if you'd like. So you want to use it as a walkie-talkie, pretend that you're calling up somebody. You can do that. You can now celebrate on the ground. That's huge news for teams in cold weather climates where it snows. Now you can do snow angels again.
Yep.
And group celebrations are okay now. Now you can celebrate as a group.
Rowboat.
Yeah, you can do the rowboat.
Get the rowboat out.
You can do the rowboat where you are down on the
ground.
Bowling. You can do that as well because you can use the football as a prop.
Yeah. That's a double whammy.
Roger Goodell wrote a letter to fans, which is just, again, I mean, he says, quote, "We know that you love..."
This is
awesome.
Like, see, I'm cool.
He goes,
I'm with it. I'm for the now.
"We know that you love spontaneous displays of emotion that come after a spectacular touchdown. And players have told us they want more freedom to be able to express themselves and celebrate their athletic achievements." That's part of a letter that Roger Goodell sent to everybody announcing these changes. Roger Goodell, a goddamn hero. Good for you, bud.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like, is there anything more, like, trying to steal the spotlight, trying to steal the credit? Like, how understanding and flexible he is. Like, come on. Thumbs up or thumbs down, by the way?
I'm going to go thumbs up, but with the understanding that it never should have been an issue to begin with. I mean, like, the whole premise of making the league more fun, whatever, allowing some freedom, some creativity, allowing these guys to show emotion, that's why I'm with that. So whatever, thumbs up. My one, the thing I feel weird most about this is you can still be penalized if you take things too far. Like, if it's some sort of offensive celebration or whatever.
You can't hump.
But, my question is,
work.
So who is the morality police? Like, why, what I find, something I might not find offensive, somebody else might find offensive, and vice versa. So it's just introducing a weird dynamic that now it's like just some middle-aged dude's going to be able to figure out if some other guy shaking his ass cheeks is offensive to the people at home, whereas before it was like an outline of like King's Balls prop. You can't do this. Like, I didn't like that you couldn't do that stuff, but at least there was an understanding that, yes, you're going to get flagged if you do this. Now, it's a little more discretion in the hands of the refs.
Right.
It introduces a level of like, well, what the hell is this guy thinking?
They reinstituted the concrete rules, and now there's more subjection. Yeah. Like, whatever.
We went back to what we were doing.
Yeah, I'm thumbs in the middle here because, like, I don't understand. Like, why people are so, like, of all the bones to pick with the NFL, I don't care if the wide receiver gets to display his creativity.
I don't care if he does or doesn't.
I don't care.
Yeah.
It's just.
It's like you should get in the end zone.
It's not. Yeah, right. It's not a hill I want to die on. Like, I don't care if the 28-year-old freak athlete gets to, pop and lock or whatever. I don't care. It's ridiculous. The fact that we spend any time debating this is so stupid. You know what I mean? It's just. Ridiculous. It's just not
it's
worth.
Like pelvic thrust all you want.
Yeah,
I don't really care.
Who cares? Like, the fact. Like, what is the? Like, but that's the thing. I don't. If the NFL wants to say you can't celebrate at all, that's not going to affect the way I consume the NFL whatsoever. I don't watch. Not to be a hardo. I don't watch the NFL to watch guys celebrate. It adds nothing for me. Yeah. I understand that it adds something for other people, and I'm happy for those people. But it's just I don't care about celebrations. Score a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I mean, I still give it the thumbs up because I don't see having that basically the same opinion that you have is I don't really care. Like, so then go nuts, whatever,
yeah, sure,
do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, fine.
How offensive can you really be? Like,
yeah.
like I said,
if you pull down your pants and just
like if you all of a sudden if you're helicopter,
if you're doing the Joe Thornton out there, like then you're gonna get arrested. If you're imitating the San Diego Chargers team staffer on the sideline,
then you got problems.
You gotta go to jail. You're 15 yards in a trip to the local.
But if you're miming and whatever,
I don't give it. Like
as long as you're not exposing yourself.
Yeah.
Or just,
if you keep your pants on, the flag.
You want to pull the Randy Moss fake like you pull your pants down. That's okay.
Yeah.
Actually pulling your pants down, just don't do that.
Yeah, there's gonna be more.
That's an issue.
There's gonna be more offensive things on like the commercials in between plays that you're gonna see in the end zone.
But don't turn it in the XFL.
And like I said, for me the biggest thing is like the NFL pretending like it's doing some sort of great thing by changing this rule. I don't like that either.
Yeah.
Speaking of the NFL pretending it's doing some great thing, the regular season overtime shortened from 15 minutes to 10 minutes. It'll also be switched to 10 minutes in the preseason. They'll stick with the regular. It doesn't really matter in the playoffs because you're playing until somebody wins. There's no ties anyways. I think that'll stay at 15 if I'm not mistaken. But again, it doesn't matter. You're just kind of where you're changing. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Overtime going from 15 minutes to 10 minutes.
I'm saying thumbs down. The idea. Well, I don't like their reasoning for this whole thing. First and foremost, they're making it. This goes back to them just not really being, upfront, I guess, with their real intentions, because they're saying it's basically to make sure that
player safety. Right?
Player safety is the issue. That's not the issue.
No, it's not.
That is not the issue. But the reason I'm giving it the thumbs down is like time of game is not really an issue for me when it comes to the NFL.
Me neither.
It's once a week. Like Major League Baseball, they have a time of game issue because I'm expected to watch that on a nightly basis. The NFL, I'm not too worried about
Sunday, man. What am I doing?
And they're saying it's about player safety. Let's be real here. They're more worried about games bleeding into the 4 o'clock games or whatever.
Or the 8 o'clock games.
Or the 8 o'clock games. So that's where their head's at this whole thing. I just feel like, I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact either way. So I guess my thumbs down stems more from the fact that they're trying to play it off as something that it isn't. I don't know. I think there are just other ways. If you want to change the overtime, I would suggest even if the whole thing now is you score a touchdown, the game's over. You kick the field goal, obviously the other team gets whatever. I'd say you score a touchdown, you give the other team a chance to score a touchdown.
Yep.
I'd even extend it to that because, like I said, I'm not worried about the time.
Yep.
The time's cool. It's Sunday afternoon.
For me, it's thumbs down. Go to college. That's simple. Go to the college rules. But I don't think the NFL, I wonder if there's some sort of foolish pride here. The NFL is like, there's no chance in hell we're pulling a page out of college football's playbook. I could see them doing that. Too much pride. But it's disingenuous for a couple of reasons. Like you mentioned, it's just, it probably has more to do with ulterior motives than anything else and player safety. And if you're going to continue to give me Thursday Night Football, 16, 17 weeks a season, if you're going to give me 4 meaningless preseason games where Joe Schmo is playing the fourth quarter, in a game in August or September, then I'm not going to care about overtime. It's just, there's other ways. If you want to protect players, there's other ways to do it than changing where you kick off the goddamn football from and going from 15 to 10 minutes in overtime. That's not, those, how many guys are having their careers shortened by the 11th minute in overtime?
Yeah.
None.
Yeah, it's
ridiculous. Get rid of Thursday night games or limit Thursday night games. Get rid of a week in the preseason. Do something. Like, it's just, you're not really making a whole lot of difference here. I just don't see it. If anything, and we're going to get maybe more ties, and ties suck in football.
I was going to say, that is the one byproduct of this thing, is that just by, this, it might not happen as frequently as people maybe expect, right, when you hear that they're shortening the overtime. I don't think you're going to see all of a sudden like this huge outburst of ties across the league, although we did see, recent history shows that we've had more for whatever reason. But
the product
but I don't think anybody likes a tie. And now I'm worried that with the 10 minutes, is a team going to start making more of an effort to bleed the clock?
So that's going to be awful.
Like, if is a team going to look to chew up, 7-8 minutes of the clock and then, maybe kick the field goal and then play defense, force the other team to have a 2-minute drill? Because then that's just, what that does is that just completely is counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish with this whole thing.
Game, right.
And that's just going to suck.
Yep.
That's just going to suck. It's going to be a bad product in overtime when I don't think overtime is the issue at all with what you have.
The product isn't very good because of all these other reasons that I mentioned in terms of like the Thursday night games, whether it's it's just a more physical game than it's ever been.
Right.
All of these issues are making the product worse. That's why we're seeing more ties, I think. Like, that's why, Seattle and Arizona on a Sunday night, like, those teams weren't very good this year.
Yeah.
And they played to a tie, or it was close to a tie. Like, the same thing's going to happen It's going to, I do think
the short turnaround excuse of, like, if this team is forced to play 5 quarters on Sunday with the game on Thursday, it makes this huge difference. Like, get out of town. I mean, it's overtime. At that point, you're running on adrenaline anyway, so who the hell cares?
But, it's May 25th, and we're talking about the NFL, so good for them. Let's move on.
Always do it. Yep.
We're talking NBA. Kevin Durant, I think, is the jumping off point here. I'm imagining this came from comments made by Stephen A. Smith, I think, is where we really circled into this.
And we got the NBA Finals coming up in general, so I feel like it's something we should probably touch on. But yeah, essentially, Stephen A. Smith called out Kevin Durant for basically changing his character since joining the Warriors.
Right.
I'm trying to think of the...
I got the quote right here. He says, Stephen A. Smith said this, he's aged, and along the process of aging, he's gotten more arrogant, he's gotten more disrespectful, he's gotten more dismissive, particularly to the fans. To be quite honest with you, he hasn't gotten smarter. And the reason why he hasn't gotten smarter is because the younger Durant never would have said something so flagrantly disrespectful towards fans. Durant said somewhere along the lines, if you don't like the playoff product, don't watch, is basically what he said.
Yeah.
I don't think I did Stephen A. Smith much justice there, but he probably said a little bit more animated.
It's a great impression that you gave.
I don't hate what he said. I really don't. Like I agree. Like, I think Kevin Durant almost, it's just he's gotten.
See, my thing is, I'm not sure this is a new development.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that
maybe
we would
just.
I think what we're seeing from Kevin Durant now might have always been there, but most people were just too blind to either too blind to just recognize that or didn't want to believe it because they were so caught up in the narrative of Durant being this good guy is kind of the face of good versus the evil of the Warriors when he was in OKC, kind of like trying to slay the beast, I guess, of the Western Conference, and everybody it was easy to rally behind the Thunder when Durant was there, and I think that maybe if you look back, there might have been some things that kind of suggested that this was eventually going to be the guy that he turned into within the media. So I don't know. I'm not sold that this is like some crazy new development. I just think maybe this has always been there, and it just heightened now.
Yeah, probably like just the exposure and all that. He's a weird guy because he kind of just. It doesn't seem like he's enjoying himself very much.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's just maybe
just smile a whole lot.
No, yeah. I don't know. But it got us thinking. Athletes that you've kind of flip-flopped on, because like you said, and he talked about being blind to it. Maybe I was blind to it. I didn't really have a problem with Kevin Durant. I didn't necessarily like him. Now I can't stand him. Like, it's just one of these things.
And it's weird because like
sports,
the hatred obviously started when he picked the Warriors in free agency and went there. But I mean, I don't know. For me, I will never. Very rarely will I criticize a player for choosing a particular destination in free agency. I mean, you get to that point in your career, and it's a personal decision. Whether you want to go for the money, whether you want to chase a ring, whether it's some loyalty factor, comfort for your family, whatever, man, that's you. Yeah. And I know it's difficult to separate athletes and look at them as just working employees because it's difficult to relate to them in that regard. But I think, at least I find, this is the one area when I can relate to them to some extent, and be like, okay, that was just a career move on his part.
Yeah.
It's maybe like a job search, and he chose to go in that direction. So I'm not going to hold that against him. I didn't hate him just because he joined the Warriors. I think a lot of people did, though.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's just, for me, it's like, I don't know, he seemed innocent enough, and then, like, just to make that decision and kind of, I don't know, he ran from what he was.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I don't necessarily agree with it.
But like, then don't, I just don't want to hear about it as much.
Yeah.
But like,
but to your point, though, a lot of people turned on him.
Yeah. So, who have you, anybody come to mind? I got a list here. That's pretty.
Go ahead, because I got
I just look at somebody like Ronda Rousey and somebody I flipped.
So basically, yeah, athletes that you flip. There's a lot of guys.
A lot of it takes is like exposure. I think you get to a certain point of exposure, and it kind of you just subconsciously turn on somebody.
Yeah.
Rousey was that way for me. Like, she was so good, very interesting story, and then she gets punched in the mouth and kind of falls back to a sore loser. Rob Gronkowski, a guy, I'm not a Patriots fan, so I never really liked Gronk. I always thought it was kind of weird. Like, the more I see of him, the more I learn of him. It's just, he's a guy who just wants to have fun, so I've actually flip-flopped the other way. Like, I enjoy him. Like, guy works his ass off. There's no real reason to dislike him. John Lackey is a guy I flip-flop like whatever day of the week. And Tom Brady, I think, is one that I think that is going to be a big one for a lot of people, because I think in the last 3 or 4 years especially, and it has nothing to do with Deflategate necessarily, at least not directly, it's just like he almost sees the end is near in his career and is like, I want to start to pivot towards my next career.
Right.
And it's happening and kind of overlapping and almost overshadowing how good of a competitor he is. Sure, like, the play still stands up, but it's just, I don't know. The real commercialization of Tom Brady has kind of annoyed me.
That's an issue
that's a guy
across
that I really
the board.
respected, still respect, just don't,
It's all about, there's so many instances, too, where, like, I have this thing where, like, once everybody starts to like somebody, like, or the coverage is just that immense that it's just like, it makes me start to hate that person even more.
Right.
Or, I don't know, it's weird to judge somebody based on, like, the amount of attention they get, because it's just, it doesn't really get to the core of who they really are. Like, for an example, like Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
Like, by all accounts, Tim Tebow seems like a great guy. Like, there's no reason for me to personally not like Tim Tebow. But there's just you're just beaten down with so much hype that, like, you can't help but sometimes hate the guy. Like,
for you and I too, like, we've talked about this, it almost goes the other way too, where people hate somebody so much, where, like, I kind of like
him. Yeah, exactly. And I think I got to that point. And I wrote down a few names as well. LeBron James, obviously, is a guy that's one of the more polarizing athletes of our generation. And every time, I've come around, like, there's been times where the hatred for him is so, deep that it makes me start to like him a little bit. And it's like, I want to like him because, you see across sports where there's this guys getting arrested left and right and all this unnecessary drama. And by all accounts, he also seems like a pretty good guy off the court. You know what I mean? I don't know that personally, but it's just from what I've read and what I see, what I observe. He seems like a decent enough guy, but then he'll say something that's kind of arrogant and it just makes you flip in the other direction. So I flip-flop on him a lot. I mentioned Tebow. Conor McGregor is another one, kind of similar to Rousey in the sense that there's such a following that...
That's a sport that'll kind of...
Yeah, and then, like, just the things that he says, but... Then I'll be like, all right, he's arrogant, but at the same time, he backs it up and he's willing to fight everybody. So it's just like it's these flip-flop.
Yeah.
These ones you flip-flop on, it's just what you want to read or what believe on a particular day. And it's tough.
Yeah, it is.
It's tough.
Our producer,
but those are the three most.
Was pinging me saying that Aaron Rodgers doesn't annoy me because of the discount double check. And I don't really care what he has to say because...
But he's another good example of somebody I flip-flop on him.
Well, with Brady, it's more like, this is why I'm right about everything, not necessarily selling stuff. Like, I never had a problem with Peyton Manning. Like, it doesn't, that kind of stuff doesn't bother me. Like, Brady, like, trying to tell me how smart he is annoys me. All right, let's go to, you want to do predictions real quick and get out of here?
Sure.
All right. What's your prediction this week?
Well, I knew we'd circle back to this at the old, and this would be slap a nice bow on our conversation about athletes you flip-flop on. Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's got some things going on in Seattle is, the story that came out essentially that the gist of it is that he reportedly still holds the Super Bowl loss to the Patriots against Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. That there's some sort of that he took that loss basically harder than anybody on the Seahawks. So. a few weeks ago on this podcast, said that, when Pete Carroll came out and said there was a 0% chance that they were going to trade Richard Sherman, that to me just like, that was him throwing cold water on the fire. But I just still thought there was something there, because if you're John Schneider, the GM out in Seattle, you don't acknowledge that you're having trade talks with one of your most recognizable players unless there's something there. And the more something like this comes out, it leads me to believe that Richard Sherman is not going to be in Seattle when the season begins. I thought that they would have traded him before the NFL draft or during the draft. That didn't happen, so that obviously lessens the chances that he will be traded. But I still think he's going to get traded, and I think it's going to happen relatively soon.
Interesting. That's a very good article I'd go check out if I was anybody who knows how to read.
Yeah.
You want to talk about
what I was able to comprehend?
Talk about coworkers who hate each other. There's a lot of toxicity, it seems like, in Seattle. Michael Bennett's already come out and refuted that entire report, so there's a lot going on there. Nobody likes Russell Wilson either. A lot of tying in. Speaking of people, I get the sense that
there's going to be some changes there.
Yeah.
In some capacity, I think Sherman's going to be the heart of it.
Interesting. My prediction, real simple one. I think somebody gets nabbed for a DUI this week. I'm not sure.
As long as it's not you or I don't really care.
No, not one of us. Hopefully not. Somebody in the sports world is going to get hit for a DUI.
It's Memorial Day weekend.
Memorial Day weekend. It is the unofficial start of summer. You got people, whether it's the NFL guys are back in their cities or whatever. There's like I just said, just Memorial Day weekend by itself. A lot of partying.
We're everywhere this weekend.
I think maybe a college coach, some big figure in sports is going to get a DUI this weekend. Good. So that's my prediction. It's
a pretty evergreen prediction too.
Yeah, very evergreen. There will be a few DUIs somewhere along the way. That's all the time we have for this week. It's been real. We'll be back again next week, God willing. As long as one of us doesn't get DUI. This has been NESN Around, NESN.com's podcast about everything and anything. Mike Cole, that's Ricky Doyle. We'll see you next week.